All right, so let's get started. We'll start with, as we often do, half butterfly. So right leg is straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. And then just nice and relaxed, we come forward and down. And last night I had somebody in class and they were doing this, which is very, very common. So I can't see any of you except for Michael. So I'm just going to encourage you that if you're holding your foot, if you're kind of pulling, just let your arms relax. Might even want to turn the palms up. And we're looking for a stretch back here, but it does not need to be super intense. Okay, so that's very often what people doing this are. They're thinking, well, you know, I feel more stretch like this. I do too. I mean, I can do this. The problem is you're also stressing here. And your spine, when you round like this and you come forward, the back of your spine is very vulnerable. Okay, that's what you have to understand. And joints generally, how do I say this? This is a generalization, so it's not absolute, but generally speaking, joints don't really like aggressive, rough stuff. Muscles do. So when you're exercising properly, your muscles are taking the ballistic forces. Like when you're running, if you're running properly, then you are using the muscles in your feet and your legs to take the force of what you're doing. It should not be going into your joints and knees and hips, okay, your ankles, knees, and hips. So this is part of the reason, at least some people are today recommending what they call barefoot running, okay? So you go ahead and come into the posture. I'm just talking here. Okay, right leg straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. So barefoot running, the reason why at least some people are recommending this is because when you wear shoes, the tendency is to relax all this. Your foot, your ankle, your lower leg, and you tend to strike on the heel. So you have this big cushiony heel and you hit the heel and you roll, okay? My understanding, and again, I'm not a biomechanist, I don't have a laboratory, I can't study human movement. Again, everything I share with you guys comes from people who are much smarter than me, people with labs, people who have studies, and clinicians, and people who've published papers and journals and things like that. I'm not just making this stuff up. I wouldn't do that to you, okay? But again, and there can be differences of opinion, so I'm not saying this is the final word, but it makes a lot of sense to me given what I've learned and studied. Let's switch sides. Okay, same thing other sides, the half butterfly. So left leg here, we're looking for that stretch in the back of the left thigh. So the barefoot running, it's very interesting because what at least some experts say is when you wear a traditional shoe to walk or to run, you tend to relax these muscles down here. So this results in a few things. One is when the muscles are relaxed, the joint is taking the stress, right? When you striking the ground, the shock wave is going up your leg, ankle, knee, hips. So I don't know about you, but I know many people these days in my yoga classes, people are ending up with knee replacements, hip replacements, ankle surgeries. So is this really normal? Is this really unavoidable? Is this really the best solution? I don't know, but it makes me question things because humans have been around for 4 million years and we didn't have hip replacements. We didn't have knee replacements. And, you know, they're elderly. You might think that, oh, once you're 40, like you're dead. That's not true. That's an urban myth. So you can go to tribes where people live to be 80, 90, even older. And they don't have science. They don't have technology. They also don't have shoes. Okay? So when you wear a barefoot shoe, what it forces you to do And I'm not suggesting you run out and buy barefoot shoes and start running in them. For most people, because we grew up with traditional shoes, it takes a while to acclimate and to get used to it. And there are also dangers, like we don't live in a natural environment. So if you live in the city, which most of us do, there's glass, there's nails, there's all kinds of things on the ground that you may not be ready for. Barefoot shoes are very thin in the sole, so your foot is more vulnerable. But generally speaking, what happens if you start wearing barefoot shoes is you're forced to use these muscles down here. So some of you come to the Monday class, and we do a lot of balancing in that class. And again, I can't see you because most of you don't put your cameras on. The reason I don't really emphasize that is a lot of times it's hard to see anyway. Unless you angle the camera in the right way, you can have backlighting, angle is strange. So it's not the most important thing. What's important is you're monitoring yourself. But I can't see how you're doing when we're doing the balance postures. And you've probably heard me say before, balance is one of the most valuable and important things you get out of the Monday class. We don't do that in yin, right? We don't do balancing, so you're not going to get that benefit here. Okay, both legs straight. Now we're targeting the spine. Okay, so you might not feel much. That's okay. The legs we usually feel, but now we may not feel them anymore because both legs are creating tension here. So it's not as much of a stretch here, and that allows it to go into your back more, and that's the intention. But if your back is healthy, if your spine is healthy, you probably won't feel it very much. That's okay. Okay, just take my word for it that rounding your back here is going to be beneficial for you unless you have a condition or an injury. Okay, so if you know you've got something, there's a lot of pain, doctor told you don't fold forward, then obviously don't do it. Okay? You can use support under your forearms, your forehead, as necessary. Otherwise, just let your back round, let gravity take over. So the barefoot shoes, they help you create a natural arch in your foot by strengthening the fascia and the muscles in your foot that become very weak from traditional shoes. They also work these muscles down here. And in order to balance well, you need the muscles down here to be strong, to be able to support the weight of your body on one leg. And then you also need your inner ear to be good as well. So this is why there's sort of two things going on. Barefoot shoes can help with the lower leg, as well as, walking barefoot, especially over uneven terrain. So if you get some barefoot shoes, break them in, get used to using them, and then see if you can get out on some trails. And get off the concrete, get off the flat ground. That'll really help strengthen these muscles down here. And the great thing about walking is you can do it with loved ones. If you have a pet, like a dog, you can take your dog out for a long walk. If you have a partner, it will be good for both of your health, not just your physical health, your mental and emotional well-being. And the funny thing is, it doesn't even matter if you like doing it or not. So, if you have kids or, again, a partner, they might be like, well, I don't like hiking. I don't want to go outside. It's too hot. Like in Georgia right now, it's really hot, right? It really doesn't matter if you like it or not. You will likely feel better over the long term. So yes, while you're out there, you might be sweating bullets. You might come home and drink like a gallon of water, like, oh my God, that was the worst thing ever. But if you pay attention, then likely that evening or maybe the next day, you'll probably feel a little better. Your energy will be better. Your mood will be better. Now, one dose may not be enough for that. But if you keep that up, I think you'll find just overall you're regulated better. The human body was designed to move in nature. So when you give it that input, it naturally feels better. And you feel better because that's what you're feeling is your own body. All right, let's go ahead and come up and then back onto our back. We'll relax, take it easy. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze and just shake it off, a little bit of gentle movement. And this is the leg cradle. We use that to counter stretch. Take your time. And then we'll go ahead and hinge up to seated. So hands under hips, palms down, legs straight up, lift the head and neck, take a deep breath, exhale, lower, inhale, bring the legs up, and exhale up to seated. Okay, you may want to turn to face the long side of your mat. You may also want to sit on something. This can be a very challenging posture for many people, so if you're finding it difficult, just keep that in mind. You're not alone. Okay. All right, so legs are wide. Whenever we're doing this in yin yoga, this is going to be called a dragonfly of some sort. Okay. Now, left foot, make sure you know your left and your right. I'm not mirroring, so you need to check your left. Left foot, we're going to reach down and hold the foot with both hands. If you can't reach, bend your knee or use a yoga strap or a belt or a tie or something. Just grab something, put it over that foot. Okay? Now, the most important thing, or a very important thing, maybe not the most important is probably safety. So make sure that you feel safe here. Second most important thing, do I feel a stretch here? Yes or no? So right waist and ribs. If the answer is no, then you'll need to roll or stack your right shoulder over your left. If the answer is yes, then you just stay right here. So for many people, it's just going to look like this. It may not look fancy or interesting or impress anybody. That doesn't matter. If the answer is no, then you're going to do this. And as you can see, mine is not very pretty or impressive, and that doesn't matter. It's, as some of you have heard me say in the past, it's unfortunate almost that some people look really good doing yoga, because then many people start to kind of obsess about that. They think, oh my God, wow, she looks so pretty, and look at how flexible she is, and that pose looks really difficult. And then people start pursuing that as an end into itself, and it's not really what yoga was intended for. That's a little bit like, I don't know, the example that's coming to my mind is like looking at someone who's in open heart surgery and being impressed, and then saying, ooh, I need to do that. No, that's not really, it's not really the idea. Yoga can be thought of as an intervention, just like open heart surgery is. It's something we do for wellness, for wholeness, for health, to nourish ourselves and to just improve our lives overall. When we start making it about how we look and not how we feel, then we've lost sight of the big picture, really. We're starting to muddy the waters. So let this posture be as ugly as it wants to be. Just find this stretch in your waist and ribs and know that that's where the benefit is coming from, not by how you look, okay? Okay, so we're switching sides. Same thing, other side. This is a half dragonfly, again, a challenging posture for many people, myself included. So with barefoot shoes, you strengthen the lower part of your leg. This should help improve, again, balance. And the other thing, which is the inspiration for me mentioning them today, is it will cause you to use your muscles to protect your joints, at least if you have trained yourself properly. Now, if we never wore shoes, you wouldn't have to train yourself. Your body would just naturally have learned to run where the impact is taken in the front of your foot. So you're using your muscles. So this is my understanding of, the kind of the big difference between the way people who grew up with shoes run versus more traditional people who run barefoot. Is when you're running or walking barefoot, you tend to land on the front of your foot, and that uses the muscles in your lower leg. When you have a big cushion on your heel, then you tend to land in your heel. And again, that will send a shock wave up your leg. Now, I'm not saying, I mentioned earlier hip replacements, knee replacements. I'm not suggesting that all of that comes from shoes or from running. There are so many things that we do as modern people that are unnatural. From the food that we eat, to the amount of activity that we have in our lives, to, again, the types of things that we put on our body that might modify the biomechanics of the human being. But the important thing to remember is that, again, humans basically, as we know them, the human body, this is a 4 million-year-old design. Sometimes you hear modern scientists and doctors talk like, oh, well, the human body is not perfect. We're not meant to walk upright. Well, I would say that's a bit arrogant. I would say probably 4 million years of evolution says otherwise. If it was such a failed design, wouldn't humans have died out or changed in that time frame? So which is more likely, the human design is flawed, or that we're messing with it by putting it in shoes and putting it on sidewalks and streets and feeding it things that are made basically in labs, unnatural stuff? So this is the question that we have to ask ourselves. And for me, the answer is clear. For you, the answer might be different. But for me, the answer is clear. I think the human being and the human body is probably as perfect as it's going to get. The question is, are we using it properly, or are we asking it to do things it's not meant to do? For instance, like sit in a chair for 8 hours a day. It just wasn't designed to do that. So if you ask it to do that, there's probably going to be some negative side effects. All right, let's go ahead and transition to frog. You probably want to still face the long side of your mat, but we take the knees, so we bend the knees, take them as wide as they will go. And then you can have your feet together or apart, flexed or pointed. That's totally up to you. You can stay up on your hands, but you can also drop down to your elbows. And we want to feel this in the inside of our thighs, okay? A groin or adductor stretch. So this posture, for whatever reason, a lot of people find really challenging. So not challenging in the way of it being difficult, but just the sensations they feel, the amount of sensation they feel and where they feel it. I actually like this posture. I'm not sure why people are so adverse to feeling a groin stretch, but they are. So talking with my massage therapist, it sounds like that's pretty common, that a lot of people don't stretch the groin. They don't like the way that it feels. He's mentioned that he knows he needs to stretch the groin more, and he doesn't. So it's probably very, very common. I actually enjoy these stretches because I feel a fair amount of tension here, and it feels good to release that. But I may be in the minority there. So the good news is once you understand what's going on, there is a ton you can do to help counterbalance the effects of the modern lifestyle and give your body the inputs it needs to function properly. So I think it's not a bad way of thinking of it is the body requires certain inputs: food, water, you might say love, even community. That the human being is just designed in a certain way that, again, for 4 million years, we basically lived the same way. You have to understand that agriculture, industrialization, all this stuff, this is all new. It's like brand new. And our body, our nervous system, it doesn't really know what to do with these things. Like road rage, traffic, stress at work, loneliness, right? Like living alone or living with just one person, not having a community really. These are things that the body really isn't prepared for. It doesn't really know what to do with them. So again, once you understand this, a lot of mysteries can be solved. Things like depression, anxiety, insomnia, ill health, all kinds of things can begin saying, oh, okay, well, it's just because I'm not giving myself the right inputs that I'm having these problems. And I think that this is a good go-to because these things are generally low cost and relatively low impact. Their lifestyle changes, and that's what yoga is really all about, is lifestyle ultimately. It's not just about one class or exercise. It tends to be really a lifestyle when it's most effective. All right, let's come on out of that one. Child pose is what I recommend, but if child pose isn't comfortable, choose something that's comfortable for you. Okay, let's inhale to a tabletop. We'll do a little bit of what we call bear pose here, so just give everything a good stretch. Shrugging the shoulders, rolling the neck. And then when you're done with that, you can spend a little time in down dog, getting into your legs and feet. So I mentioned earlier, balance. Balance is important for health, just so you know. It is not optional. So if your balance is poor, I would begin today working on your balance. Again, the Monday class is one way you can do that, but you can even just stand on one leg more often. Okay, we're going to move into a sleeping swan. So right knee forward, right foot across the mat. Hips are down and back, and torso comes forward and down. Looking for a stretch in the outside of our right hip and leg. Okay, so we're feeling that stretch there. Make sure the knee and the foot on the right leg is happy so the foot can flex or point. Be parallel with the knee or pushed back toward the left hip. The right knee can point straight ahead or out to the side. The hips can rock to the left or to the right. Okay, so you have a lot of options. There are only two ways to do it wrong. One is you don't feel a stretch here. The other is you're injuring yourself somehow. You're hurting yourself. And very often we do get some sensation, but not always. So we do need to be somewhat mindful and cautious and maybe draw on our past experience to really kind of feel out whether or not we're okay or not. So the other thing, since I talked a little bit about barefoot shoes today, the other thing to keep in mind is that your feet are the foundation for the rest of your body. So if you have shoes on with big heels, which is very fashionable, and a narrow toe box and a stiff heel, right? So these are, if you look at shoes, the more fashionable they are, generally the taller the heel is, the more narrow the toe box is, and the harder the heel is, just generally speaking. So like platform shoes, they go in and out of style, but anyone who shows up wearing platform shoes, that they are trying to make a fashion statement, right? They're being very fashionable. Someone who shows up like in flip-flops or, something like that, you're not going to be impressed with their shoes. You're not going to be like, oh my God, those are amazing shoes, right? So generally speaking, for whatever reason, what's fashionable tends to be the opposite of what's actually healthy for us as human beings. I'm not sure why that is, but that just tends to be the case if you look at a lot of things. So anyway, if you wear shoes like that, the whole rest of your body is affected by that. So the tilt of your pelvis, the way that stresses your spine, the way your head and shoulders will sit on top of all of that. Let's switch sides. Here's a side 2. So there's nothing wrong with being fashionable. If you're going to a party or you have an event or you got a hot date or something like that, wear your heels, wear your platform shoes, do whatever you need to do. The real question is, what do we do the rest of the time? And also, are there activities we can do to counteract the effects of, again, sort of the modern lifestyle or being fashionable, right? So again, if you wear heels to an event or something like that, your body's going to take a little bit of a hit by doing that. And so then, if the rest of the time, though, you are spending time outside daily, you're walking on trails with bare feet or minimal footwear, you're not wearing big, heavy shoes when unnecessary, then the effect is going to be minimal. And that's a lot of what I'm trying to do with these classes and in general is, what the yogis, from my perspective, what the yogis figured out a long time ago is that there are certain inputs that were missing, again, in their life. Because yoga grew up in a culture that in its time was the most advanced culture on the planet. Same with Taoism and Taoist practices. These came out of affluent cultures and societies, not poor, or, by our standards today, they might seem, not advanced. But at the time, those were advanced human cultures and societies. And so what that meant probably was a lot of sedentariness, people who were living in situations where they were very much removed from nature and these natural inputs I'm talking about. And it probably started affecting their health and their mood and their well-being. So they began figuring out ways that they could bring back inputs and stresses that were necessary to maintain health. And as I was saying earlier, that's the really good news, is once you start being aware of these things, it's possible to make changes in your life, to take time to give your body the inputs it needs to really regulate properly and to be really whole and happy and healthy. Ultimately, for me, that's what yoga is really about. I'm not interested in contortionism or even in some lofty, spiritual realization. To me, the most spiritual thing you can do as a human being is to live a happy human life. This is the goal as far as I can tell. All right, let's go ahead and unwind. And we have one more posture before we'll take a break, another break. So this one, fairly simple. Prop yourself up on the elbows. That's called Sphinx. It's a back bend. So you're looking to feel it back here. And if you don't, you're just going to take yourself a little deeper. You can do that simply by straightening your arms. So this is what feels good for me today, is right here. Okay, so everyone's different how far they'll want to go. So this is a great example of how we can undo or counteract some of the negative effects of the modern lifestyle. So most of us, whether we like it or not, whether we have a choice or not, and even if we have a choice, we might find ourselves choosing to spend a lot of time at the computer, at a desk, in a chair, right? To some degree, there's many things we want to do that are in that position. It's the same is true for me. You might think because I'm talking about this or because I teach yoga that means I don't spend any time at the computer. That's not true at all. I spend more time on my devices at my computer than is healthy for me. So again, the message I want to send is not so much that you're going to be able to leave this environment that is, has a lot of negative inputs and lacks positive inputs. The message is that you can do things to counteract the effect of it. So if I spend hours and hours every day with my slumped over, with my back rounded, sitting in a chair, then spending 5 minutes a day here doing this, bringing my spine in the opposite direction, is a really good idea. And those of you that are doing this, please realize or recognize that I could be on a laptop and working in this position as long as I wasn't on a Zoom meeting, right? Something where someone can see me. I mean, I can type and I can read and I can do almost any kind of work that I need to do in this position on my elbows. And if you look at my back, I'm in a little bit of a back bend. Now, this is where I go if I really want to stress my spine. I can't work like this with my hands on the ground, right? But I certainly can do this for 5 minutes. So I get it. Again, we only have so much time during the day. So this isn't always going to be possible. Even 5 minutes, it can feel like, we're just adding more to our plate. And stress is important, managing stress. So this is where, it usually is a balancing act. We don't want to stress ourselves out by just adding another to-do that is, difficult for us to manage. Okay, let's come on down. We'll rest for a moment on the belly. Okay, let's do a little counter stretch before we continue. So you're just going to bring your arms out like wings, bend the knees, and we just let the feet go side to side. Okay, so now let's transition to cattail. To do this, you draw your left leg up, your head on your right hand. Take the right leg, move it back, and then bend the knee, reach back, and grab your right foot with your left hand. You can pull this foot in at various angles. Okay. Your left leg can be straight or bent, closer to your face or further from your face. You can rest your head on your hand and elbow, but you could also rest your head on your upper arm, a block, a bolster, a blanket, or even straight on the ground. Your left shoulder can stack above your right, or you can lay your left shoulder back, deepening the back bend and the twist. And then finally, the right foot, this one here, you can take that and kick it back, kind of like a bow or dancer, while still holding the foot. And that might give you a bit of a different stretch. For some people, that might be a better stretch. That word better is a word that we need to look out for. You know, what do we mean when we say better? So when I say better, usually for people that means either a deeper stretch, if that's what they're looking for, or sometimes it actually means the opposite. Sometimes it means a less intense stretch if what they're doing feels too intense already, too much, overwhelming. That's a really important concept, you know, not getting overwhelmed, because if we do get overwhelmed, if we do too much, then very often we quit and we stop something, and we want to avoid that. So you want to, you know, regulate, and that's both in a short term and also over the long term, you know. So if we go too hard or try too hard with something, we can reach a point where we burn out and we just quit and stop. This happens with meditation, it happens with yoga, it happens with all kinds of things. So knowing when you're getting to that point and, you know, giving yourself permission to ease off, to relax, take it easy. Some of these suggestions I'm making may be similar. I found this happening with like walking. Like most of you know that I suggest getting out and walking every day, which is something I try and do. And I did that for years. And then just last winter, I really kind of got to the point where I felt kind of burned out with it. I needed a break. And so I basically took the winter off from, you know, sort of forcing myself to get out and walk. Because again, in modern life, you don't need to walk for anything. You can pretty much drive everywhere. It's actually something you have to say, I'm going to go walk, right? For most of us. Maybe you're the exception. Maybe you live somewhere where, you know, you have to walk to get groceries or you have to walk places, but most of us don't. Most of us don't walk to work. All right, let's switch sides. I'm just turning so I can face the camera. Everybody, you don't need to do that. Okay, so right leg up, left leg back. We bend the knee, grab the foot, pull the heel towards the buttocks. Okay. So because there really isn't anything, right? I don't walk to visit my girlfriend or my friends. I don't walk to work. Walking to the grocery store, I've done that before. It's not convenient or quick, right? It takes time. I could definitely get more groceries and do it faster if I don't walk. And I also have a much more limited option if I decide to walk to the grocery store, because there's only one walking distance. Whereas I can drive to 5, 6, 7 different grocery stores. So you see how we haven't really set up modern life in a way that encourages walking or even makes walking easy. there are places that I've walked to in the past that the sidewalk will just end. And it's actually dangerous, right? You've got like fast moving traffic and you're walking on the side of the road. So I hope you understand that if you are finding it difficult or struggle to do these things, it's real. The struggle is real. The thing that I'm going to encourage you to do is it's worth it. It really is worth it. That again, walking is an input that your body is going to expect. And in order for your body, and when I say body, I'm also talking about your brain, I'm also talking about your emotions. Okay, and there have been studies that are done. Again, these things that I share with you are things that have been researched by people who are much, much smarter than I am. Okay, so I'm not telling you something that's just my opinion that I've just come up with out of thin air. Walking, getting outside, walking, and I do have to emphasize getting outside. Yes, it's hot. Heat is a good hormetic stress. So stay hydrated. If you know you have a condition, if you're going to get heat stroke, then don't do it. But most of us aren't going to have that problem. Most of us can take some heat, all right? And even though you get sweaty and smelly and uncomfortable, it's still actually good for you. And this goes back to the point I was saying earlier, which is, if you can encourage your loved ones to go, or your friends, right? Invite your friends out for a walk. Like, hey, let's go walk around let's do a loop around the park. Let's talk about, your date. Let's walk around the park as we do it. Instead of spending more time on your device, see if you can encourage someone to meet you on a trail, in a park, somewhere where you can walk together. It's one of the most human things you can do is walk and talk together. This is what humans have been doing for a very, very long time. All right, one last posture, possibly the most therapeutic and the most challenging in today's sequence. So it's not a coincidence these two go together. Let's see if you can do it though. So we come back to kneeling position. Okay, so you can sit on your heels. You can sit between your heels. You can sit on a block. Your toes can point back. Your toes can point out to the sides. Your knees can be together or they can be apart. Okay. Now there are 3 areas that you need to be mindful of with this posture. One is your ankles/feet. The other is your knees. And the other is your back. Okay, so if feet hurt, try toes back, toes out to the side, pad, put something under the ankle. Okay. If your knees hurt, try sitting on a block, maybe 2 blocks, 3 blocks. Try taking your knees apart. And then if you feel a stretch in the front of your thighs, you're just going to stay there. If you don't, however, you can begin lowering back to your hands, elbows, onto a bolster, the crown of your head, or all the way back onto your back. Very common, people ask me, is it okay if my knees come up? It's fine, as long as you feel safe, okay? So again, that feeling of safety, that can be tricky because it's true that sometimes we'll feel a lot of sensation and we won't feel safe, but actually that's the beginning of the healing process. Other times we might not feel much sensation at all, or we might feel really good, but we're actually hurting ourselves. So a good example of that is, like chocolate cake. Sugar is, again, this is not my opinion. Okay, this is the research bears this out. And so please don't get upset with the messenger. Don't get upset with me for really emphasizing this, but there's a lot of evidence pointing in this direction more and more. So probably in 10 or 20 years, it'll be common knowledge. I don't know, because sometimes things that researchers discover just never enter into the public sort of common knowledge for whatever reason. I don't know why. You know, some people will say, well, it's a conspiracy or whatever. I don't know. I'm not smart enough. I don't have access to research to know. But sugar is just awful for you. There's nothing good about sugar. Same with high fructose corn syrup. There's if you never ate those things again, your health would be better for it. Period. Full stop. No question. So chocolate cake tastes good. We like it. It's not good for us. Full stop. So again, there are things we can do with our bodies too that might feel good while we're doing them, but are ultimately harmful. Now, chocolate actually in itself, if you take out the sugar, cocoa actually has a lot of medicinal benefits, good things for you. So, you know, when you eat chocolate cake, there may be some things that are good, but it's not outweighed. It doesn't outweigh the harmful effects. Same with alcohol. Alcohol has some good things in it, but the good is never outweighed by the harm that you're doing by drinking the alcohol. And so it is with things like, you know, running, you know, so certain kinds of running, if you have conditions with your ankles and knees and hips, I know people are actually addicted to running. They were addicted to the runner's high. And so despite them tearing up their limbs and their bodies saying, hey, stop running, they really don't know how to stop. They get too much relief from the running, and they don't really know another way to do that. And this is just simply addiction, you know, that running, that loss of thought and worry and concern and the feel-good hormones, for them is worth, you know, the damage they're sort of doing to their body. So again, just because something feels good and brings us relief, it doesn't mean that we're not doing harm to ourselves in other ways. All right, let's unwind from that. These are just all things to be aware of, right? To know that these are possibilities for us. Because then hopefully we can stay mindful as we practice, because again, these are things that I have actually seen people do in yoga. I have seen people tear up their body because yoga makes them feel so good, and it's the only relief they get. So they just keep practicing even when the doctor and their body is like, please stop, please stop, please stop. Again, they don't know how to, because it's the only way that they know to get relief. So it really doesn't matter if that relief is coming from heroin, from overeating, from, you know, running too much, or from doing too much yoga. At a certain point, we have to be open to the possibility that, as the Buddha said a long time ago, turning medicine into disease. And so Buddha was a really smart person, and he saw a lot of this a long, long time ago. And so he said, you know, if you're not careful, you take Buddhism, you take Buddhist practices, medicine, the cure, and you actually turn that into more suffering. And that was his thing, suffering. He was trying to alleviate suffering. So he was trying to say, hey, be careful. If you're not careful, you can turn this into more suffering, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do. All right, everyone, give your legs a little squeeze, shake it out. And then set a timer on your phone for 6 minutes, as usual. And just allow your body to rest until that timer goes off. The more stillness, the better.